The producers and distributors of Tech AV training aids, in association with Artisan Training Productions, welcome you to this training module on the topic of confined spaces. It must be understood that this course will not make you an expert in confined spaces, but it will provide you with the necessary knowledge and information to be able to understand what is required for safe working in a confined space. We would like to draw your attention to the Occupational Health and Safety Act Regulation Number 5 of the General Safety Regulations. You will find a copy of this regulation in your trainee workbook. Please ensure that you read this page in order to familiarize yourself with the regulations. It must be well noted that any contravention of a safety regulation constitutes a serious offense and will result in a substantial legal penalty to anyone guilty of such an offense. This program has been designed to help you understand the regulations concerning working in designated confined spaces, and to help explain important procedures and safety precautions that must be adhered to. Let us now describe what is meant by a confined space. There are several definitions, but it can be agreed that a confined space is any place that is not intended for continuous human occupancy, and which contains one or more of the following hazards: the potential for a contaminated or an oxygen-deficient atmosphere, the risk of entrapment, difficult entry and exit, and the risk of engulfment. What does a confined space look like? Typical confined spaces include such structures as storage tanks, silos, towers including cooling towers, pits and trenches, stormwater pipes, road and rail tankers, boilers and furnaces, and ships' holds, just to mention a few typical examples. Of course, any space can become a confined space, depending on the conditions existing in it. For example, a motor vehicle is classed as a confined space. However, if exhaust fumes contaminate the air inside, then it becomes a hazardous confined space. A storeroom can be classified as a hazardous confined space if it contains vapor or fume-producing substances such as paint, thinners, or other chemical products. Any space will also be classified as confined when a person or persons who enter that space have a restricted ability to avoid or escape danger. The most common danger in a confined space is that of a simple lack of oxygen or oxygen deficiency. The next most common danger is that of an explosive or ignitable atmosphere, and this is closely linked to a toxic atmosphere, in which harmful gases, vapors, and fumes exist in the air. So what then can make a confined space dangerous or hazardous? Let us look at some typical possibilities. Many confined spaces are used for the storage of hazardous substances and will sometimes require maintenance or repair. Even after a thorough cleaning, it is still possible that fumes may leach out of the metal structure, especially during hot work operations. Leaks and spills of gases or toxic substances often occur from nearby pipes or other vessels in the proximity, as they enter via drains or sumps. These substances may eventually create a hazardous atmosphere within a confined space. The work being done within a confined space can also create a hazardous atmosphere. Operations such as welding and flame cutting can seriously deplete the atmosphere of oxygen and result in an oxygen-deficient atmosphere. Gases can lay dormant in decaying matter or foul water. These gases can be released into the atmosphere as the matter is disturbed by workers' feet. Further conditions that commonly exist in many confined spaces include tripping or falling hazards, extremes of temperature, both hot and cold, water hazards and the risk of drowning, the risk of engulfment or being buried alive, electrical hazards, and moving or rotating machinery. Don't overlook the possible presence of vermin, especially in pits and trenches. So, what have we learned so far? We know that a confined space can be any place in which human activity is restricted and the presence of hazards is a real possibility. We learnt that hazards can be caused through the presence of many factors, including gases and substances in the atmosphere. After the break, we shall look more closely at atmospheres in confined spaces.